going on. Hello, are we in good voice today? Yeah. Fantastic. Well, this is a tremendous gathering for the case of Fiona, who is one of my co-defendants with a co-barrister and a co-solicitor. Isn't that fantastic?
Yes! Yes!
And I'm going to say a few words and then introduce Louise from Save Our Rights. Quick round of applause. Who we are working with all the time. So I am Piers Corbyn and I am from #StopNewNormal. And Stop New Normal works with everybody. We'll promote anybody who's promoting the fight back against the new normal, which includes Stand Up X, obviously, Save Our Rights, which is Louise and others, and KBF, Keep Britain Free. So we support all their initiatives. That is important to say, because we want to build a united campaign. Now, I want to make the point as well that everybody who's been arrested for anything to do with COVID lockdown will be defended to the end by the movement. And that is why we have to unite, right? And we've got to support all the court cases, and we don't want anyone to plead guilty ever. We're not guilty of these trumped up illegal charges. We demand they all be dropped, and of course we will support anyone defending in whatever way they are. There's some people using common law, which is fine, but we are here under statute law. And we believe we have a good legal case, and we intend to win. Quick round of applause there. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say much before I introduce Louise, but I do want to make the point that we are now seeing around the world and in the United Kingdom, more and more people are standing up opposing the lockdowns. And despite the 24/7 fake news coming out of the BBC and the propagation of contagion fear on a daily basis. I was watching TV last night in Birmingham, and I was completely horrified. Everything they say, every sentence, it's all about COVID, 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 lockdown, brainwashing, brainwashing, brainwashing. It is totally evil. And they arrested a crowd of people who were having a party at night, and they charged the organiser with some offence, and he's been charged with a £100 fine. Well, of course, I don't think they should pay, and I'm glad they're partying, because hugs are actually good for you. Here we are. Hugs against COVID, because it increases your hormone levels instantly, especially if it's somebody of the opposite sex, I have to say. But that is helping us, and if you're locked away, getting pale, you will contract illnesses. And in America, in New York, the rate of people getting COVID, whatever it might be, some illness with such a broad definition, but getting COVID, was 7 times higher among people who were locked down than people who were going to work. Yeah. So the lockdown has a negative effect. Yeah. Okay, and there's no justification in any terms for the lockdowns. We know that from the facts of the doctors. They make people ill, and the actual facts of any illnesses are, whatever they are, it's no more than flu. So we have lockdowns in the name of flu. So we should have had, well, a lockdown every year for the last century. I mean, it's insane. We do not have that. So I would say the facts show that the lockdown operation is a hoax for another purpose. And the virus itself, that may or may not exist, but whatever it is, it doesn't justify any of the lockdowns. And you must ask ourselves, well, for what justification do we have all these controls? They mean the end of democracy and the end of science. Because you see, the science so-called they make up is made up, which means they can't subject to democratic peer review. Now, if they're not having democracy in science, they can't have democracy anywhere. So it actually means the end of democracy, as was pointed out by George Orwell in 1984. 1984. The end of all democracy was there, and we now see that before us. And we ask ourselves, well, who gains from this? Because people think, would the government be so silly to lock down its own economy? Well, yes, it would. It depends who they're working for. Who is going to gain from this lockdown? The answer is the mega corporations are gaining daily from this lockdown. Businesses are going to the wall. Millions and millions of jobs are being lost as we speak. The trade unions saying, don't worry, our jobs will come back, is a complete lie. The trade unions have betrayed us. They're like Esau, who sold his birthright for a mess of pottage. That's what the trade unions have done. They're being paid to do nothing, but they've really been bribed to get rid of jobs. The mega corporations will take over, and millions and millions will be either jobless or on universal credit or slave wages, as under various mega corporations around the world. And our politicians similarly have betrayed us. So the key things we've got to do now is make them listen. And that is not an easy task when their ears are closed and they're brainwashed 24/7 by the BBC. But I want to say here what is the purpose of the demonstration on the 29th, which you have to understand, because we have to unite around a common purpose and not get directed into many things that people want to raise. Okay, you can give out leaflets to people or whatever, but the purpose of the demonstration is to, first of all, get people to wake up and stand up to the COVID bogey virus attacks on our jobs, businesses, welfare rights, culture, education and freedoms. That is the prime purpose. Okay. And specifically, we must show our support to the whistleblowing doctors who exposed the fakeness of the virus, and the fact that any illness around is not bad enough for it's no justification in any terms for the lockdown measures, and therefore those have to be ended forthwith. And specifically, we seek support for our Better Way Charter, which has a lot of interest in support, to put forward ways whereby the people's illnesses can be reduced. And you know what these are, and I can read them out, and they are... You hold that. They're very simple. Our Better Way Charter is 1, end all the lockdowns to really bring back our jobs, education, travel and everything. 2, end masking, because masking is to rebreathe your toxins and it's terrorism of children, and it is a psychological operation to bring forth the next lockdown. The third thing is we've got to end all the COVID vax programs, and I mean all the programs, because the programs are to steal your money and your life. There are cures for these COVID symptoms, whatever they are caused by, with chloroquine and zinc. So there's no need for any vaccination program whatsoever. The purpose of the vaccination program is theft by Bill Gates of hell to get money from you as a taxpayer. The fourth thing we've got to do is end all the COVID tracks programs. Those are not to look after you. And I notice now the government is upping the tracks programs. And then they suddenly say, oh, there's a lot of people who've got COVID here. If you do a tracks program, they'll find you with COVID. You just got to have a temperature or something, you know, and therefore they'll say it's COVID. So the tracks program is to up the numbers on the scare stories of programs. That is its only purpose. So never fill in any of those forms unless you happen to have Michael Mouse with you, who does help. And we've got to take down 5G because that it does make people ill, it gives them COVID symptoms, and it's known that this is an illness producing stuff anyway. Wi-Fi has to be reduced, and the government ought to be helping people have Ethernet instead. And the sixth point on this is independent monitoring of all NHS assignations of illness and death. Because yes, applaud that please, yes. Because The whistleblowers have to be put in charge of assignation of debt. Okay, and the last point we've got to demand, of course, is to the MPs. They've got to stop this renewal of this COVID nonsense by the vote in Parliament in September, or go from office. And we will drive them out of office if they don't agree. And you should applaud that. And the last point, I want to advertise something happening next week. Because you see, what we have now is a psychological operation against the people. In fact, it's a world psychological operation unparalleled in the history of the human race. Just understand that. And that means we have to fight it everywhere. And specifically, we know, the government admit, they do have a behavioural insight team, which is actually in the same area of London as Bill Gates' operation. Quite interestingly, you can walk from one to the other. It's at number 4 Matthew Parker Street, near Central Hall. Just a few hundred yards from Bill Gates' operation up Victoria Street. So we're going to have a demonstration, yes, at 12 noon on Wednesday the 26th to say end the psychological operation, no more lockdowns, no masks, no social distancing, take down 5G and support the Better Way Charter. So I'm going to end now and say you know what we support in the choice between tyranny and freedom, and that is freedom! And I'm going to hand over to Louise from Save Our Rights. Hooray!
Hi everyone, so I wanted to just talk about the Coronavirus Act 2020 because without it we wouldn't be here today, and that's not a good thing. So I started Save Our Rights back in April because I could see the power grabs that were going to come from the Coronavirus Act 2020. The original lockdown was done under the Public Health Act in 1984, and this was used to make a statutory instrument that was ultra-virus, which means beyond the reach of powers. They used that to lock us down and then rushed through a 300-page act in one day through Parliament. This Coronavirus Act 2020 was never debated, it was never scrutinised, it didn't follow the proper channels, the proper scrutiny that it should have done. It has been used to make over 100 statutory instruments that have changed over 600 pieces of legislation. They've taken away protections from people with mental health issues, protections from people with, who are elderly and children in care homes. This act is so abhorrent, it can't be ignored. We have to get rid of the whole thing, so which is why we're supporting Piers' Stop All Go campaign. But we would, because it cannot be ignored. We've got to see, this was always going to be a power grab. Government and Parliament and parliamentarians love a power grab. They love a disaster because what do they get to do? They get to do things that they've been trying to do for years but haven't been able to get away with it. So that is what they've done through the Coronavirus Act 2020, and it cannot be accepted. And people don't know. People don't know what's in it. People are just realising things about like the fact that children can be taken away underneath it, and actually that has been there since March. It's been there since the 26th of March, and it's not going away anytime soon. It's set to run out in 2 years, but many of the clauses are actually set to never run out, and we've got to be aware of this. And this is why at Save Our Rights we are saying that we actually don't want this system anymore, because this system produced this act, and that should never have happened. We're not free. We don't live under a democracy, because if we did, this act would never have happened. And if it had happened, we'd have been able to say no, and we'd have been able to take our power back. But that has not been the case. And therefore, that's why at Save Our Rights UK, we're looking for a whole system reform, because the Coronavirus Act 2020 has been a catalyst to prove that we do not live in a free democracy. And I'll leave it there. Hi, sorry, I've never used a megaphone before, guys, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, oh my god, okay. What if it's got COVID on it? Alright, I just want to thank everyone for coming out, especially in this weather today. So we're here to support myself and everyone that's been unfairly and unjustly charged under the coronavirus legislation. Now, 19 people were arrested on the 16th of May. 13 people have been charged, including myself, Piers, and some others we know, just for peacefully protesting the draconian legislation that's clearly stripping us of our freedoms. Just 2 weeks afterwards, the BLM protests happened, where the legislation was planned not to be enforced. We're all human, therefore we are all entitled to our human rights, to free speech and the right to assemble.
Freedom of speech, freedom of movement.
So if the threat to public health was so real, why is one group or protest treated differently? We, all of us here, are standing for every UK citizen's rights. We know we've been lied to, and we're living through a time in which our government actively uses the media to manipulate the population, to turn on one another, to shame one another, and to enforce social disapproval in the community. Those who enforce these unlawful laws are doing so on the whim of a government that does not have our best interests or the public health in mind. So stand with us. Anyway, so if we don't fight for our freedoms, we'll never get them back when they're taken away. First speech. So yeah, thanks everyone. I'm going to head in about 10 minutes, I think. Anyone else wants to speak about it, please come up and do so, or just have a little chat. I'm going to try and get some people to come into court, I think, with their social distancing rules. Yeah, it might be a bit tricky. So I'll communicate from inside and text or whatever, so I'll try and get as many people in as possible. Alright, and if you can't come in, I'm sorry, and I hope it's quick. Yeah, well, I hope so. Thanks guys!